So that was a bit of a hangover from my VJing days. I like expressing myself through songs. And this song in particular has been one of my favorites since I heard it for the very first time during its release in 1997, when most of you must not have been born. And it seemed absolutely perfect for the theme today. Well, I think if you paid attention to the lyrics, you might agree with me that it gives a fairly accurate description of life. Life is a bittersweet symphony. We all spend most of our waking hours trying to make ends meet. We're all slaves to money and things, and then we all die. I know that sounds really grim, but that's the nature of the truth. It hurts. But what really struck me about this song was the fact that it talks of change. And it talks about being stuck in a mold, something that all of us struggle with during the course of our lives. And yet, we have to accept that change is the only constant. During the course of my career, I too have been a million different people from one day to the next. I started off as a model. I became a TV presenter. I became a VJ, started acting, started hosting live events. I was constantly changing lanes, even though I was driving on the same road. And maybe that helped me just a little bit to not get stuck in a particular mode. But despite that, I did struggle a fair bit when it was time to change. So in the early 2000s, I did a show in which I played a teenage witch. And it was the closest thing that I have known to a government job in terms of security. I had a constant stream of work, steady income, and of course, lots of perks. I remember we completed around 200 odd episodes, and at the 100 episode celebration party, the network told us that this show is going to go on forever. And someday we're going to celebrate the 1000th episode. And honestly, with the popularity of the show back then, it didn't seem so far-fetched. In 2007, I got an opportunity to act in a film which was being filmed in New York, and I really wanted to be there. Up until then, I was not able to take up any work that took me outside of the city for a long period of time because of my commitment to the show. But it was 4 years in, we knew the drill. So we managed to, bank a few episodes, and voila, I was off to New York. It was my first trip to America. I went completely nuts. I blew up lots of money because I knew I was coming back to my government job until I wasn't. Because when I came back, after running up a nice hefty credit card bill, I was informed that the network had rather unceremoniously pulled the plug on the show. And my entire world crashed. I was so used to having steady work that I never looked for any other avenues. I had a steady income, so, I was secure. I was so used to playing a young, vivacious, fun character that I was like, okay, I don't need to do the usual soap operas that used to populate television those days. And all of that just got taken away from me overnight, just like that. Just like that. And I remember I had to pay off that credit card bill, so I was forced to take on a show that was a thing of nightmares for me. I shot for only 10 days, but I cried every single day of that shoot. I remember sitting in the makeup room bawling, calling my friends from my previous show, telling them how much I missed them. And then on one particular day, in the midst of my sobs, something in my head told me that this was it. I had to accept the change that my career was going through. I knew that I was stuck in the mold of playing a particular kind of character, and now it was time for me to break that mold and reinvent myself. I thought I would never enjoy any other show ever again in my life. And while that show still remains my grandest legacy, I did in fact do a fair amount of amazing work. It's been 20 years and I'm still here, and I have, I think, around 35 different characters under my belt. The same happened when I stopped VJing. I thought I would never enjoy presenting on TV again. Same there, I ended up hosting a lot of fun shows. One of them happens to be one of the most popular reality stand-up comedy shows on Indian television. It ran for almost 17 odd seasons, and I was their longest running anchor. So I think what we don't realize is that for new things to come, old things need to go. Just a little before the pandemic hit, I was going through a particularly low phase in my career. I wasn't getting the kind of work I wanted. I was transitioning between age groups. I looked too old for one age group, looked too young for another age group, and there was no work happening in that space of purgatory that I was in. Of course, I thought that was the end of the road for me, and that's it, my career's over. And on one particular evening, I remember looking really sad and teary-eyed, and my daughter came and asked me, "Mama, why are you looking so sad?" And I said, "Darling, I'm not getting any work anymore." And she was only 5 years old then, and totally uncorrupted by life or the trappings of the ego. And she said, "So why can't you make your own work?" And that was such a simple solution. But I was stuck in a mold of being an entertainer who always needed someone from the outside to keep me employed. Of course, that was a thing of the past because I got a show, I was back on a set, life was grand, and then boom, 2020 happened. All of us got locked down. And that is when I got faced with the harshest reality of my life. That me and what I did, my job, were totally dispensable. The world would go on like nothing has changed, even if I never stood in front of a camera or in front of an audience. And I realized that I had to find an alternate career that was pandemic-proof, recession-proof, and age-proof. Luckily, my daughter's voice was in my head. So I decided to make my own work, and I went back to education and learning. When I was younger, I wasn't very academically driven because, you know, all of us are so excited about finishing college and going out into the big bad world. Well, don't. Really, there's no rush. If you can keep learning, then keep learning. And the world will wait, I promise you. Anyway, I really regretted the fact that I did not have a higher education. And here I was getting an opportunity to do it again. So I decided to follow that rabbit hole and just following the white rabbit. That's a line from one of my favorite films. If you know, you know. And while I was terrified of going back to formal education, because guess what? Once again, I was in a mold of a student from 20 years ago, and now I had to recalibrate myself to a whole new style of learning. Since then, I've done a course in the science of well-being, in counseling, I've done a certificate course in applied Buddhist psychology. I'm a certified emotional intelligence coach. I now have a postgraduate diploma in arts-based therapy, and I've just come back from Oxford after finishing a teacher's training in mindfulness meditation. I was expecting an applause there, but okay. The point is, it feels really good to show that off, though my teachers would kill me for fueling my ego. But here I was, in the middle of a pandemic that was such a tragic global event, getting an opportunity to explore education again. And here's the funny part. All these courses offline would have been a distant dream for me, but because of the lockdown, they became online, and there I was in virtual classrooms with students from all over the world. And while the pandemic took away a lot from all of us, it gave me a brand new set of skills, an additional revenue stream, and new purpose that was pandemic-proof, recession-proof, and age-proof. And here I was, I made my own work. That's another cue for applause, but thank you. If I were to compare my life to a symphony, I would say that I've had my own share of movements. Now, movements come together to tell you a musical story, much like the chapters of a book, and experience tell you about life. And it takes all kinds of instruments to create harmonic music, in the same way that it takes all kinds of experiences, good, bad, success, failure, love, loss, to make a life wholesome. And most movement happens during times of failure. Because, you know, when you're successful, you don't have time to think. You're flying high, riding waves. You're just so damn heady. But it's during the low points, the moments of failure, the crossroads, the dead ends, that is when you are forced to recalibrate, to pivot, to break molds, to reinvent, and to grow. My failures have been my biggest teachers. They've made me recognize my skills, my fears. They've pushed me to challenge my circumstances, and they have led me to grow. So now, while most of you will still end up spending a lot of your time trying to pay bills and be enslaved by money and things, maybe have your hearts broken looking for that perfect loved one who will also break your heart, I'm sorry. I just hope that you can try and not get stuck in molds. I hope that you question things, you remain curious about yourselves, you create your own definition of success. Please don't fear change. And I really wish that you all encounter failure. And I hope that at that point you have the wisdom to embrace it, because that is what is going to make you grow as an individual. And I want you to try and experience life in as many ways as possible, but do keep your safety and the safety of others front and center of all your decisions. Stay kind, be pliable, and don't just pursue something that serves you. Try and create a legacy that will be remembered and spoken of long before, or rather long after, you are dead and gone. Choose the red pill. If you know, you know. Thank you.